Excuse me, bartender. Could you get me a good anime, please? Please get me a good anime. Oh, I know I've
I'm
already
afraid
upset
we're
some
fresh
people.
out. Well, I'm afraid we're fresh out. We got some tokusatsu here. We got a little bit of the kaiju. Maybe a little bit of the it's off the menu, but I could serve you some Category 3 Korean horror. But we'd have fresh out a good anime. Sorry,
I mean,
sorry.
that's all good in its own right. So that's fair. But I feel people may have been a little upset by my incendiary opening statement there, given the show we're covering and the high regard a lot of people tend to hold in. But we'll get to that shortly. Ladies, gentlemen, MBs, welcome to Warui Deshou's Deshou the Third, our premium podcast for premium people of a premium nature. I'm Shadon, and joining me, as always, is he's not a barman by nature, but he is actually a genuinely good and wise, sagely person like barman can be. It is, of course, the subtle doctor.
Hello, friends. Hi, Shadon. I'm so happy to be doing this pod. Like, we have delayed it due to my own life being topsy-turvy. I feel like I've aged 2 years in the past 2 weeks.
Yikes! Yeah, we
It's
we
been a
we
rough one.
both had it. We've both had it a little bit. I was sick last Friday as well, and now I'm actually sick again today. I've got a mild chest infection. But I
Oh,
thought to myself, you know what? If I could do Angel's Egg way back when, having basically, you
man.
remember that where I was barely alive. I was just a
I
hollow
salute
shell of
you.
myself. If
Yeah,
I if
that
I
was
could do that, I
rough.
can do this. And besides, I
Yes.
brought along the best medicine someone like me can buy: strong beer.
Woohoo.
Hey, happy Friday, everyone! Cheers.
Well,
Mm.
listen, I don't even just mean physical ailments. I mean the whole thing. Like, the last 2 weeks has been like, I feel as if life is grinding its fist into me and doing so with pleasure. But it's okay because it's Friday. I am, the physical ailment part I spoke of is mostly better. Yeah. And we're gonna like have some fun talking about some anime. We're probably gonna argue,
Oh, we
and
are.
it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be fun. I'm
my
psyched.
my well, just to without spoiling our own show here a little bit, just to reveal a tiny bit, to pull the curtain back a little to show how the sausage is made. Me and Doc, before we start doing our podcast, we of course talk a little bit about what we've seen, offer some initial thoughts. That way, we don't completely blindside each other with our opinions. And without saying which episode it is, we're covering Death Parade episodes 5 through 8 today. One of these episodes I thought was absolutely atrocious and a great argument for why the show should never have been extended beyond the initial pilot of Dead Billiards. And that very same episode is one that Doc thinks is the best of the bunch. So you're gonna have to look forward to that today. That's gonna be some real red versus blue shit right there. Mm.
That's what we call a tease in the business. So stay tuned for all of that and more. But
And
first,
more. But
but
first,
first,
we're gonna, if I recall the structure of the show correctly, because my brain doesn't currently work, if it has ever worked, to be quite honest, we're gonna go through creatives and then Patreon questions. And then we will go through our talking points. And just to
yeah,
mention, if you're new to Desho the Third, this is a plot summary free format. So we don't do like an extended summary of the episodes before we go to talking points. We'll just provide context as and when is appropriate while we're going along. Um, and of course, full spoilers ahead for Death Parade, a show that has unfortunately spoiled itself, in my opinion. But well, that's just me. I don't know. Maybe my tolerance is just at the low point. Like it ebbs and peaks, but I'm just here like, "Ugh."
well, we go from to as we talk about the creatives for this week. No, they're actually some really talented folks. I mean, they're talent. I shouldn't say that. I think there are talented folks that we talk about every single week. Honestly, that
Mhm.
these shows happen to get made. Even the ones that are bad are still, really hard to make and require a lot of the blood, sweat, and tears and effort. So I think we talk about really talented people every time. But like the CVs of a couple of the people we're going to talk about are I think pretty good, pretty good. But you did mention that this is Deshou the Third. It's a patron exclusive or patron first show for $5 tier patrons and up. If you want to catch the next episode, if you're listening to this right on when it goes free and you're like, man, I really want to hear what they say about Death Parade, the finale, like as soon as that last episode on the final set drops, then just go to patreon.com Warui Deshou. There's a slash in there. You can figure out where to put it. And sign up at the $5 tier and you get a lot of cool benefits. This is the last season though of, I don't know if we've announced that on this show, but it's the last season that we're doing the Patreon after Death Parade, actually at the end of September, which will probably be pretty close by the time you're hearing this, if you were hearing it free to air. At the end of September, we're shutting the Patreon down. There will be a post on the Patreon, a written post about all the details, where you can support us now on Coffee, and kind of what we're doing, how we're changing up the format of the show and such. But that'll be for you to peruse at your leisure. So creative, Shadon. I'm gonna try to rapid fire through these. We're gonna talk about episode directors. Let's talk about Keiji Goto, who is an anime industry vet, born in 1968. So, and oh wait, no, I thought there was a death date, but that's not true. Keiji's still with us. Thank goodness. Blood type B, incidentally.
I mean, how many other useless statistics is his profile going to have at this point? This could be likes, dislikes.
I can tell you his hometown. Hometown is Adachi, Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
Blood type B. Favorite food, sushi. Most watched TV program, food-related shows.
Are you on his dating profile here?
This is just the Anime News Network profile.
This is curiously detailed, I must say.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
Well, I mean, hopefully the gallery section is not incognito pictures. That would be awkward and also illegal, more than likely. Don't do that.
Yeah, this one is weirdly populated. I guess because this person's been around for a while, right? So Goto-san has credits all over the place. Did storyboarding and animation and episode direction for a couple of the episodes of, I think, a pretty beloved franchise, but don't really hear it talked about very much today. And that's Aria. Both Aria the Natural and Aria the Animation. Aria is the first ever show when I was really when I was re-entering anime fandom, like in 2009 or so. It was the first show that I remember hearing the term Iyashike attached to. And people were like, oh, healing anime, you should check these out. Like, it's cool. And I'm like, really? I don't know if that sounds all that exciting. And they're like, that's the point. So, yeah. Angel Cop.
Oh.
Just animation. The animation in Angel Cop can be quite good at times. So
it is admittedly a series that works best if you just treat it like a silent movie.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. I don't know if this will mean very much to you, but I'll ask you, have you heard of the Brave series, Shadon?
Nope.
Okay. Well, fans of the giant robos will know about the Brave series. Gal Gaigar is the most famous one. It's the only one that ever came out in North America on physical media. But Goto-san was a key animator on at least half a dozen episodes on like 4 different Brave series. Might Gain, X Kaiser, Dagarn, Sunfibird, and J Decker. And all of these are pretty easy to find, even on like regular ass YouTube. if you want to like, I think J Decker might be on YouTube, but like other methods as well. They're pretty easy to track down. They're really fun super robot shows for kids, but they're a lot of fun. And I love the way that the shows make robots look and move. There's great designs in that. And like I said, I didn't actually say how he was involved in Death Parade. Storyboarded and directed episode 4. which we're not covering this time, but I don't think we got to him last time, so I wanted to highlight him. Got credits in Doraemon, got credits in Ergo Proxy for key animation. Fatal Fury, the motion picture, animated really, really nicely. But an interesting movie. Go ahead, share your opinions of Fatal Fury, the motion picture.
If it's the one I'm thinking of that ends with Terry throwing his hat into the sun as he walks away while this really corny 80s song plays. Yeah.
That one,
I mean, the rest of that film is complete and utter like trash as far as the writing goes.
It's whatever.
But it leads up to the most 80s moment ever, so I'm okay with it.
Yes.
It's entirely justified.
We got Macross 7, animation director, not just a key animator, but animation director of 4 different episodes, and then key animated on a couple. Macross Plus. Wait a minute. This can't be right. This says it was animation director for episode 12. Macross Plus was only 4 episodes long. Maybe it means 1 and 2, and there's not like a comma in there.
Unless someone knows something we don't.
Right, exactly.
The lost Macross episodes.
Exactly. Frontier, the TV show, and the Wings of Goodbye film. In fact, storyboarded the entire Wings of Goodbye film, or at least assisted on that. It just says storyboard. Animation direction for Magic Knight Rayearth 1 and 2. That's just a fantastic magical girl show. Love Magic Knight Rayearth so much. So happy they put that Blu-ray set out. It looks so pretty. Character designer and animation director for a bunch of Martian successor Nadesco, which is like this really beloved like sci-fi parody. Fantastic. Like really, really love that show. Penguin Drum, episode direction, animation direction, effects direction, storyboarding, key animation for a ton of Penguin Drum. Persona 4 animated stuff, the key animation for the Read or Die OAV, just another thing that's like just this huge cult favorite. Like, I mean, it's not something you'll hear about in terms of like people's favorite stuff most of the time, but like people that love it, love that Read or Die OAV.
It sounds like an incredible name for a PSA series for schools.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of an X-Men-ish thing. And the lead superhero is a librarian by day, but her superpower is she can manipulate paper to do whatever, and she's called the Paper. That's her superhero name. The Paper.
Is there like a joke in that show where someone goes like, "She's not so silent at night"?
No.
Something like that.
Culture over there is assuredly different.
Yeah. Does she shoot Dewey Decimals out of a gun at people?
No, they're on the Library of Congress system. No, that's not true, because the Library of Congress is an American thing. That's interesting. I never thought about how are libraries in Great Britain? Like, what is their classification system? Is it Dewey?
I can't recall. I've not been to one in a while. The only thing I will remark is that basically the way the government treats them, I think that they are something to be got rid of, basically.
Libraries?
Christ.
Oh, you mean the government thinks that they should be?
Yeah,
okay, Gotcha.
Yeah. Either that or they've got to be completely full of fawning Churchill documentaries, but that's a discussion for a different day.
We have, animation and character design credits for Erotsuki Doji 1 and 3, Legend of the Overfiend.
Oh,
infamous film where you're from. There was quite a kerfuffle about it once upon a time. Man, there's just so much shit on it. Like the Thundercats cartoon from America, an in-betweener. Very like just Tekkaman Blade. I mean, that's like David Majors loves Tekkaman Blade. But yeah, that's Keiji Goto. This is, I guess, why his profile is so voluminous in terms of like factoids, because he worked on stuff that a lot of people liked.
Do you reckon if he ever goes to a new animation job, he just gives his Mal Page as his resume?
That's what I would do.
Makes things much simpler. Like someone else has done all the work for you. Don't need to update that shit.
He probably is one of those lucky few people in his industry that he doesn't really have to give a resume. Perhaps. I guess it depends. Probably other animators know, but like production committees probably are not fans like we are. I take that back. He probably still has to be like, hey, here's my portfolio, fools. So let's talk about the director of episode 6. It's Jun Shishido, born in 1976 in Fukushima. Loves Superman 2. That's his favorite movie on here.
If only episode 6 was as good as Superman 2. Oh. Feel bad for that guy. Don't give. I will freely admit I feel bad for that guy. They'll give him. He came from Fukushima. That's unfortunate. So I won't rag on him. I've got plenty to rag on about episode 6, but I'll not rag on him specifically.
Is Superman 2 the one where he had to fly around the Earth backwards?
That was the very first one.
Oh, Jesus. Hilarious.
I actually honestly just have a defense of that, which is basically that he wasn't making
it's so ludicrous.
No, he wasn't spinning the Earth backwards to make it go back in time. He was just going back in time, and that was the visual that just coincided with it.
Oh, come on. We all know what was happening. Don't defend it.
I mean, anyway, it's not the Superman 1 podcast. God help us.
It's been a long time since I've seen those films. Sorry, Shishido worked on, let's take a look, did storyboarding and episode direction for a handful of episodes of the last season of Attack on Titan. Was very hands-on with the 9th episode of Banana Fish and episode 3 of Banana Fish. Did some stuff with Cardcaptor Sakura, the new one and the old one. Just a little bit of work there. Looks like I said, with Death Parade, storyboarded and directed episode 6, storyboarded and directed episode 11, something called the Chief Episode Director, which is different from the regular director in ways that I don't know because I'm not on the inside.
He just promoted himself. Just
yes.
It's completely. It's functionally the same, but he just thought, "Fuck it, I'm going to make myself more important or sound more important." Why not?
Why not, indeed. Directed The Princess and the Pilot movie, which I've heard really good things about. Storyboarded and directed it. I really want to see that movie. I've heard really good things. And also was the lead director and did a bunch of storyboarding for both seasons of The Story of Sankoku, which, if you don't know the story of Sankoku, it's sort of Eastern fantasy thing that Justin Savakis of Anime News Network, and formerly, but now of, I believe, Discotech. I believe he does video authoring and makes the Blu-rays for Discotech, called Story of Sankoku, the first ever truly feminist anime. So there's a little taste to pique your interest in Sankoku. It's very difficult to find, though. Long out of print, not easily available, which is a shame. Directed another show called To the Abandoned Sacred Beasts. Never heard of it, never seen it. Did storyboarding and direction on a few episodes of a shonen show that I liked from a few years ago a lot, but I don't really hear people talk about too much, called Ushio and Tora. Thought that was really cool. Storyboarded a bunch of Yuri on Ice also. The whole second half of that show and episodes 2 and 5, and then 7 through 12. So lots of work with of Yuri on Ice. Very involved in that one. So couple of progressive anime, Sankoku and Yuri on Ice.
Oh, if only episode 6 could spell the word progressive, let alone be it.
Oh, he's so harsh.
I have nothing nice to say about that episode. Well, no, I have one nice thing to say about it, but we'll get to it.
It's the best. It's such a good episode. All right, episode 7. Storyboarded by an entity known as Migme.
What?
I'm going to copy and paste exactly how it looks in the chat.
Migme. Okay.
Migme. No capital letters? It's not an acronym?
We were talking about Superman before. Is that related to Mr. Mixelpick? Mixopixel.
It
Like, what the
is.
fuck?
Mixopilic.
Mixopixelic, whatever you pronounce his name
Yeah,
as.
yeah.
Okay, so
Rumpelstiltskin.
Migme. Okay. Um,
Megami.
Migme is one of two things. Migme is either
Oh shit.
basically the demonic force that has half devoured the anime industry
Mm-hmm.
because they have relied on it too many times to complete projects and it demands a sacrifice each time. Or Migme is essentially the anime an animation creation equivalent or AI equivalent of HAL from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it's gone psychopathic. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, we're talking evil demonic creature or evil AI. That's as far as I'm concerned.
um. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Or it's
Goto-san.
like a
I can't do that.
or it's like a brand of pet food or something.
Mm. Oh, that's
Feed your dog
Minmo. That's
Migme. Oh, Minmo. Right.
that's
Yes.
going strong and healthy.
That's right.
So you're not
That's right.
you're not half wrong. Mimmy is the off-brand version of Minmo.
Right. Exactly. It's the Walmart knockoff that they sell.
You're strong and healthy when you feed your cats Minmi. Oh, well.
No, exactly. So Migme's CV is fairly short. So storyboarded the 7th episode of Death Parade, directed episodes 9 and 5. And storyboarded an episode of Classicaloid, which is a really neat show from a few years ago about like what if sort of the great, European classical composers came back as like cute anime boys and all had to live in a house together, and like, I don't know, Mozart was really into skateboarding and Beethoven was like a bad chef, stuff like that.
Oh man, I can totally see a visual of Mozart skateboarding, but he's skating and it's framed in such a way where it ties into the music, the sheet music that he's created. So he's doing a
Yes.
kickflip like set to one of his like adagios. I can totally see
Right.
that.
It's math.
Does Minmi's mal page also include the summoning instructions? What you need to bring them to this world, this plane of existence?
That's all very secretive. I think you have
Probably
to.
for the best.
That's a paid tier of Mal that I'm not privy to. So
Oh,
says
the
paywall
satanic
content.
side.
Yes, exactly.
$6.66 per month.
Yeah, and I just can't afford another streaming service. I mean, I just have so many that I couldn't justify it.
I mean, they have an online portal, all right. To hell.
Right. Very good. Very good. So Migme was also an assistant episode director on one episode of Rainbow, which is a really cool, like, little talked about. Half of it's like a prison drama, and then half of it is like what the boys who were in prison for very little reason, of course, like many people in prison, kind of what they make of themselves afterward. It's really, really, really good. I really like Rainbow a lot.
I apologize. That sounds great, but all I could think is that there is, of course, the British children's TV series called Rainbow, featuring Zippy, Bungle, and George. And I just when you said prison drama, I just thought of him there. My heart sank a little bit. It was like my brain was just mixing things together unprompted, and. Yeah, I think actually it might have been an episode in which Zippy was at least at one point in prison fatigues, the classic black and white straight ones. I can't recall. This could be complete bollocks. But yeah, that's all I could think of when you said that.
Please watch if you ever are thinking, which, by the way, that sounds so wonderful.
I'm never thinking. I don't think. Fuck that.
If anybody out there is thinking to themselves like, anime, it's real tropey. I'm kind of down on some of the tropes. I don't know if I want to watch a super anime thing. Seek out Rainbow, because that's just like a good ass drama and not really sort of trying to appeal to super big anime fans. And yeah, I just thought it was really great. That's one of those things that came out before streaming was a real thing, but it was streaming. It's like Funimation dipping their toes in the water in like 2010 or something. And then they didn't stream anything again for like 3 straight seasons. It's probably because nobody watched that show. But But yeah,
Funimation doing a poor job with their streaming service. Say it isn't so.
they licensed a good title, and then I guess they were just like, well, we tried Tatami Galaxy, and then we tried Rainbow, and nothing is. They picked some fantastic, like really broad appeal shows there.
Not enough slavery in them.
Sarcasm. Also some Gintama, a lot of Gintama. Worked on. I hate that you have to like call these things like Gintama TV 4/2015, Gintama TV 5/2017, Gintama TV Season 4 6/2017. Like I worked on all those. Did a lot of work as well on the Hunter x Hunter 2012 reimagining, as well as the Phantom Rouge film. Finally, we're going to talk about Yosuke Hata, who was the storyboarder for and director of episode 8, as well as episode 2. If he directed episode 2, we might have already talked about it, but just in case we didn't, it looks like Yosuke Hata did a bunch of work on the One Punch Man season 1 TV series, directed several episodes, storyboarded a couple, got some Doraemon stuff, directed a movie, was the unit director for another movie. Still not clear on what a unit director is, by the way. Storyboarded and directed like a quarter of Aka 13, the TV show. Animated a little bit of C-Control the Money and Soul of Possibility.
You've never failed to say that title right, and it's one of your many, many skills that I laud and applaud in you, Doc. Because honestly, I feel like that the name of that show could be used as a roadside sobriety test.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say, you just hold out a piece of paper?
Yes.
Can you say this in a single go?
Oh my god!
And you're absolutely plastered, and you're like, no, just put me in jail, officer.
There's a $sign. There's a colon. No. Yeah, but that's Yosuke Hata, and those are our creatives this week, Shadon.
Woo!
I was so brief. I told you I'd be brief. Here we are, 34 minutes in. It's not brief at all.
It's fine. It's fine. I'll do some light editing and take a second now. It'll be okay. Right. Well, with creatives out of the way, let's move on then to Patreon questions. So we only have 2 this week. They're from the same person, and they are from Pirate Prince Rackham. And the first one, the first one is amazing because I think it's basically going to be the point in which we just both might as well start like having our inevitable fight over episode 6.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Because while this question does not mention episode 6 specifically, it is about that.
It is, yes.
So, without further ado, first question from Rackham. What are your thoughts on the way the show portrays female fans of pop/music idols? Oh, apparently some of them have much more, much wider skill sets than I imagined. I mean, there's bomb making, and then there's bomb making like you're the Joker from Batman, but, well, there's that, I guess. I suppose we should provide context here. So in episode 6, this being the usual Death Parade format, we have 2 people who have recently died. However, they are not being seen to by Deshou. They are being seen to by new character, perennially bored afterlife man, Ginty, or Jinty, however you pronounce his name.
I think you gotta go more than bored. I think he's just actively annoyed at everyone.
Yeah.
He's super irritated all the time.
For me, he was the audience proxy for that episode.
Boo.
Sorry, too easy. But anyway, yeah, he's in charge of this one, and as Doc rightly notes, he is actively annoyed by the whole thing. He has the kind of like feel about his work that a lot of people I think do like at 10 years into it, where they're just like, fuck this shit, I'm done with it. I'm just gonna coast on through. But the people we have arriving, this is the point where I have to confess that my memory of the names here is terrible. We have Pop Idol guy.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I do recall that the girl, her name is Mayu, if I recall correctly.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and so he's the like lead singer or one of the singers.
The band I remember is like called Cha, isn't it? Cross Heart Attack.
Something like that. I think it might have been something else actually, but anyway,
Okay, so
he is
Mayu is correct. Let me see if I can find Harada.
Arada. There we go.
Yeah, Harada.
Uh,
One of the main
yeah,
characters.
no.
Yeah, Cross Heart Attack is the band. He's
Oh, right.
the bio says he's a great dancer and a womanizer.
Yeah, well, that's true. Because his history is that he was dating a fan, apparently. It's and he dumped her for whatever reason. Because he's claimed to be a womanizer. Although this is only really revealed to us through a magazine extract that we see. We don't,
Yeah.
as I recall, see him actually sleeping or like being with other women. It's just this lady who I think her name is Kay or something like that.
It starts with K.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
something like
Is
that.
her name Kana?
Kana, something like that. K, whatever. Special K, you know. So he's dating her.
Yeah.
He's dating her, and then he dumps her, and she takes her own life as a result of that. And what happens then is that her sister sleeps with him because that's the only way that she gets close to him, and leaves him a bomb behind that is in a briefcase and is shaped like a heart of a digital countdown timer. Which I'll get into that later. But that's how he dies. And Mayu, the fan, he's someone he's never met, but a female fan of his, died at the same time by slipping in the shower. And in one of the only good bits of this episode, while I say this is good, like the manner in which her death portrayed actually made my skin crawl, because it's one of those like visceral. She slips and like bangs her head, and honestly, that made me shiver when that happened. I was just like, that's when. But when you have moments like that when people get injured, you're just like. Ugh. But anyway, so they are both dead, and they end up being asked, or rather forced by Jinty or Ginty. Christ, I feel like I'm going through the GIF argument again, but never mind.
I think they say Ginty. I'm pretty sure it's Ginty.
I'll just go with Ginty then. I mean, it is GIF, not GIF. Fuck you. If you want it to be GIF, then make it start with a J. Fuck you. Anyway, point being, they make them play Twister.
Woo! Everyone's favorite party game.
Yes. And in the course of all of this like game, they end up like hanging over each other, like, and there's a lot of like, I'm
as
so
you
glad
do. Yeah,
In I mean, it is the party game most. I'm 99% certain is most commonly associated with sexual assault lawsuits. I don't know though. Maybe
is it really? I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh, but
it wouldn't surprise me, honestly. But anyway,
I mean, it's definitely made for to encourage the getting more physically intimate.
Yeah, I mean, when it says left hand red and the hand doesn't go on left on red, I'm just saying something bad's happened. But anyway, so after a long time in which nothing really happens because there is no failure state beyond not landing on the actual things, whether the game is like the stakes have risen, and they basically, after some point where there's got like, the red spots turn the place really hot, the blue spots freeze them, all this sort of stuff, including looks at Mayu's panties and the fact that she needs to pee. That's relevant because, of course, it is. There is a moment
if you were
in which
forced to play Twister for hours, would you also not have to pee?
Can ghosts pee? I didn't realize that was a question that we would be answering.
Well, importantly, we're told that she's not exactly a ghost. It is her soul infused into a dummy body that's meant to mimic the human body.
Why do the dummies have... Never mind. This is a long...
That I couldn't tell you.
That is a weird tangent. I'm not going to go on to it. But point being, eventually, like, they get to where the entire game board, like the areas outside the spots, like descend into a spike-filled pit. And she can't hold on anymore, so he tries to save her because he's like, I'm not letting another person die because of me,
right.
Which, yeah, whatever. And then, honestly, I have so much to say. And then she lets herself go and then falls, and it turns out the spikes are actually really just made of rubber, so she's fine. She pisses herself because haha, and then I don't even know. Well, apparently she stays behind. That's another thing that happens.
Yes.
She's in the OP. So
does he. Well,
doesn't he?
I guess for a minute, did you see the after credit scene on this
Oh
one?
yeah, yeah. But I'm referring to like the longer term of the show
Yeah,
because
no,
she's
you're
around
right.
in
She's in another episode. Yeah.
Yeah, she sticks around for some reason. I don't know why. Uh, and yeah, they do like a show. She gets changed into a kimono, and suddenly she's respectable. Uh, okay, so with all that context out of the way, the the thing about this question is I can't really answer it. I don't think without answering how the show feels about Harada as well.
Yeah.
I feel like these are linked problems because the main one of the issue, the many myriad issues I have with episode 6 is that no judgment is passed on him. And you might say, in what sense? Do you mean in like the the diegesis of the show where he gets put in an elevator to heaven or hell? Because that's not shown, so we don't know about that. And there is that, but there's also the fact that no one else, apart from Mai, who like only knows his reputation, but not the personal stakes or the personal story that led to his death, uh, finds out about that. So it, it's very, how to put this, like it feels very hollow. Like that, what Harada does ultimately is very, very boneless. Like in terms of like its development. Like, what was the circumstances behind the breakup? Because he is a womanizer. Did he meet someone else? Is he cheating? Like, we don't know. We don't know these fucking details. But the problem is that because we know so little, it makes the extreme behavior of Kay's sister and Kay herself through taking her own life seems so much more wild than that. Like the lack of, I mean that in the sense that there's a lack of like background as to like these events happening. Like Kay taking her own life because he broke up with her. Like that seems like such an extreme circumstance that it's God, like that it's almost like seems like that they're trying to say like the behavior of fans is wild and ridiculous. If you follow my meaning.
I don't think you can attribute that to. I mean, not every single thing every character does is a statement about their societal role or place or who they, what gender that they are or whatever like that. I mean, I just think the show just wants you to connect the dots. I mean, this sort of thing has happened. Like someone has been broken up with, and sadly, they feel like their world has ended, and so they make the rash decision of taking their own life.
Yeah.
We are shown that Harada doesn't really seem to take it all that seriously, which seems to indicate he's very non-committal and dates around a lot and has earned this title womanizer. Because he's just kind of laughing it off like, hey, what's the big deal? I said I was sorry. Ha ha ha. And she's like crying, you're breaking up with me. Oh no. And then, I mean, it's like wild for her sister to like take revenge on her.
Oh, that was dumb.
Take revenge on her behalf. But
I hate that.
It's like not. I don't find it to be like beyond the bounds. What I find to be like sort of over the top is the manner in which she did it. But that's sort of what I think works about the episode. But I don't want to start going on my thing before you finish your thing.
Well, basically, I mean, to go back to Mayu and Kei, both of them give their lives for this dude. And I don't know how to feel about that, really. I mean, okay, yes, Kei lives at the end, but she, for all intents and purposes, she thought she was going to die.
Mayu, yeah.
Mayu, yes, sorry, yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, something about that just doesn't ring right to me. The way it feels very broad stroke, very two-dimensional portrayal of like, I mean, we compare this to like Odd Taxi, which we've been covering lately, and it has a far more nuanced look at idols and that, and the relationship between idols and fans in that show than it does here.
Yeah,
and I will grant you, part of that is the virtue of having more time dedicated to that material. Although this is also leads into my complaint on one of my complaints by episode 6, which is that I would have jettisoned this entire concept from this entire story from the show, but the reasoning why is that will come later. But the other thing as well is the show seems very judgmental about Mayu's appearance, which I also really took umbrage with. If she is the stereotypical fan, because Harada, makes a big, in his own inner monologue, he's like, why is she dressed like? Ugh. Like, he's judgmental of her.
He is, but then at the end, he like comes around and just because she's so to speak, because she's changed clothes.
Well, that's entirely the point, though. Now she looks respectable, quote unquote. But what was wrong with her initial outfit?
Nothing. I think that's what the point is like he's just a shallow jerk.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I don't think that's the show saying she looked bad in the schoolgirl outfit, but if only girls wore kimonos, then they'd be.
I
That's not what the show is going
well,
for at all, in my
I think
opinion.
it does. I think it does unintentionally because Harada, like his attitudes, are never openly challenged by the show, questioned, critiqued, anything like that. We don't get to
Do we
see
need
it.
to? He's like, I mean,
Given the premise
does
of the show, which is about bringing out like the worst of humanity and like
but I
putting it
mean the
in.
episode, like, but look in terms of the episode, right? I mean, it'd be like if you were like, oh, the Muppets doesn't question the motives of Beaker. I mean, we don't need to. He's like a goober. He's like sort of a
Be-
goofy character. Like we know
Ah!
he's no sort of avatar for like what the creators think.
Well,
Harada is like a shallow, like just
the,
airhead idol boy, like who's like, yeah, I get to fuck a lot, like.
the problem with your comparison there, Doc, is firstly, Beaker, if questioning his motives, only has one response, of course, which is me, 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 me. I mean, that is his motivation. You can do it far better than I can. But two, unless I was missing something, I don't think Death Parade is explicitly meant to be a comedy.
Well, that doesn't mean that certain episodes cannot, be comedic. Like
I didn't laugh in episode 6.
Oh, I did. I thought it was like brilliant black comedy. I thought it was delightful. I had a ball. That's why I thought it was like my favorite episode. I mean, episode 8 was really great too, but like I just thought episode 6 was just hilarious. And I thought the character dynamics were just so on point, like brilliant, made for some really funny moments and funny faces and great silliness. Like, I mean, Harada being like on the outside, he's just like, piece of cake, like shiny teeth, like super nice, but like in her inside, he's just like, oh, I wish she was cuter. Like he's just a shallow idiot. And then like Mayu, like super like overreactive, like just a fan who is like super fangirl for this boy. And then you have Ginty the whole time who's just like fuming on the side. Like everything they do, he's just like he makes some really hilarious faces. Like truly, like I was laughing really hard at a lot of his responses, especially post credits. Just when they got to put on their little concert, we saw that amazing.
Yeah.
And I thought like the judgment at the end, I think is implied to be that they were both spared because again, like, and I think this is totally confirmed in episode 7 that this is not like a Christian style, like, let's judge you for your deeds in life. It's very much like who you are in total, like who you've become by the end of your life. We're going to put it in a pressure cooker and see what comes to the surface. And what came to the surface for both of them was like a noble instinct that they're both kind of shallow and both kind of, assholes in some ways, but fundamentally they're okay. I mean, he was really broken up that Kana took her own life. I don't think he was trying to make that happen. He just, like a lot of young people, don't understand the consequences of their actions. And then hilariously killed the fucking heart time bomb, which is under a room service platter, which is incredible.
Honestly, I think I get where you're coming from. I really do, and I'm going to go into more detail after the Patreon questions. But this story does not feel like a Death Parade story because Death Parade has been like deeply, I'm going to say ugly in a artistic sense throughout much of it, and
it was
fairly
very totally
serious.
Different.
Yeah. And that's what completely caught me off guard with this. And I'm not saying that shows can't have comedic episodes, far from it. But when you're dealing with subject matter as heavy as this, where, this guy's fan killed herself, and it's just basically an excuse to move the plot along and have, have the episode happen. I also want to note as well how the show like took great pleasure in this episode in portraying Mayu's like face in very ugly ways, like the previous episodes have done, but not Harada. And I thought that's weird. I don't like that it's her that's getting this treatment and not him.
I thought her wind tunnel face was so funny. I mean, I think it was like I see where you're coming from. I just think it was like in service of the comedy, and I mean that could be something you take umbrage with. Like, it just like her sort of role in the comedic structure of the thing was to be the one that made big faces and had big, reactions in that way. And if someone were to say like, well, I think that's like a sort of sexist way to construct the comedy in the show, I don't really have a good like counter back for it. It didn't really bother me, I guess, and I mean, the P stuff like was like,
that was stupid. I hated
it. Was like, yeah, I didn't care one way or the other. I could see how it was meant to be funny. But like, I'm not really one for bodily fluids jokes much of the time. So just like, whatever. But it didn't like, offend me or, or make me upset,
The last two things I'll say is that, I think that to answer Rackham's question, it feels like an extension of the problems I mentioned in our previous Death Parade podcast, where there's that vein of misogyny running through it, and it just resurfaces here, except that there's nothing to hide that. Like, it's like throbbing on the top of the episode itself, and it's like unavoidably noticeable to me, at least. And two, my joke answer is, of the between this and Death Stranding, which I've been playing lately, it's Death Stranding of all things that is less obscene with its piss.
Oh my god!
I never thought I'd see that. So say that, given that there is a way in which in that game you, as Norman Reedus's character, can throw a grenade made of Norman Reedus's piss at Mads Mikkelsen, who is playing another character.
Right.
The fact, can I just, side note, I just want to give massive fucking props to Hideo Kojima for doing that. You've made it in your career where you can have two high name actors like that star in a video game where it's possible for one of them to throw their piss at another. The last time that happened, I think, was in one of the more like unrated versions of Jackass, but I don't know.
If we were reviewing it on Warui Deshou, you would hate that episode. The piss grenade. I feel like, I'm sorry, I did not give you actually a chance to comment, even though I was just fucking around. Did you have anything to say about that? Okay.
I'm done. Basically, I think it treats female fans either through, how do I put this, like through thin writing or just plain ignorance, like in the same way it's treated a lot of the other female characters, the one shots particularly, where it seems to typify them by the kind of behavior that is stereotyped of them, like, screaming girly fans who like will go to extreme lengths, like when their idol treats them poorly, that kind of thing. And yeah, that's basically it.
Well, I mean, I see where you're coming from there. Like, I get what you mean. I guess I didn't feel like the show was like meant to be like a big expose or whatever into like the idols or idol industry. I mean, maybe it is working from biases, I mean, as we all do, right? I mean, to me, a girl taking her own life because she was broken up with by her very handsome boyfriend that she cared a lot about is more of a, like, I don't know. It seems like much more of a universal type thing, like not really saying something about idol fans, just sort of like, this is how a young person would do something. I don't, if it would be one thing if like if the show like had them someone take their own life if idol didn't like sign their napkin or shake their hand or didn't say hi to them or something like that, but they were in a relationship. I mean, they're clearly sleeping together. She loved him. And it doesn't seem so sort of like beyond the pale of like how, like, what are they doing here?
I'd agree if we knew more about it, but what we know is very, very thin.
Yeah, I mean, you're in these episodic type shows, like, you're meant to kind of connect the dots based on tone and, breadcrumbs.
So
So
if worse to
like,
trivialize it like this episode does. I find it very strange that you can have a comedy episode in which a guy feels guilty about the fact that his girlfriend killed herself.
it's very
This,
dark. I just still thought it was really, it really worked for me as a comedy. It really, really worked for me as a comedy. I mean, I don't know. I can't really, I don't watch like a ton of, I'm not like a big comedy expert on movies. Like, I wish I could think of a black comedy and be like, what's this dark comedy about? Let's like analyze it here. I don't know. They make light of or use very dark subject matter as a vehicle for comedy. Uh, and I don't know, like a lot of the time, like this just really worked for me this episode. Um, I don't think it's making any, I don't necessarily think it's making any kind of big statement. Like it didn't hit me that way, um, but if you Rackham or Shadon, or especially, female anime fans feel this way, like I'm not going to be like, you're so wrong. I can only speak to the way I experienced it.
fair enough. Do you have anything else to add to that question, Doc?
Nope. Next.
Okay. Next question. This is: do you believe it's better for an arbiter like Destin to either have emotions or not have emotions? And what are the pros and cons of those choices in your own opinion? I actually don't know if I can answer this question. That's a horrible
If you were
cop-out.
God, what would
But
you do?
the problem is that this is partly just because we haven't seen the rest of the show yet, but also I think is going to be another part of my critique of this show now, where it just feels like we're going nowhere fast. But what is the end goal of like what happens to these souls? They say they're going for reincarnation, but do we really believe that? Do we know that to be true? Some of it seems a bit off. I don't know. And it depends really what kind of goal you've got in mind for doing this whole thing. I mean, I suppose if I were to try and answer it, basically, I would say that it is better because if, or is it though? Because do you want to be objective or not? Like, if you think of this like as a court of law kind of situation, but then again, we don't send people on courts of law to juries specifically, for people who don't have emotional responses. But then again, this is of course a world in which that's possible for them not to have emotional response. So, my feeling on this ultimately is I think that it's probably better just because of the understanding. Because you can then understand like the revulsion people feel about behavior because you feel revulsion yourself through empathy, basically, that kind of thing. I think that's the worthwhile element of that. The con of it, of course, would be that it means that you're less objective.
Whatever that
because there are plenty of scenarios I'm sure we can all think of where a situation happens and you feel utterly disgusted by it. But the judgment should not then be to punish the person who has disgusted you because it's, for whatever extenuating circumstances, whatever actual facts of the case might be, they don't deserve it. But you're acting then of emotion rather than facts and logic. The whole facts don't care about your feelings kind of argument that we've heard so many times on the internet from people who don't actually practice what they preach. So yeah, I am of the opinion that overall it is better because if you're dealing with human behavior in such a way where you're trying to make a judgment not based on a rule of law here, then having emotions and also be able to understand the emotions of others, I would say, is important. I mean, the alternative, I suppose, is Destin could be a Vulcan. That would be so bad. I mean, although admittedly, you can't say live long and prosper to them because they're dead.
Yeah, right. It's true. That would be a loophole in the writing if they were to do that. So I'm gonna quibble with this question in terms of like a technicality, a philosophical one, because I don't think any of us are gonna know or have any idea what it's like to be an experiencer or a being without emotions or biases. I mean, we all like, I feel like, the question, like, to either not have emotions or have them, feels to me a little bit like, I mean, you kind of awakened this thought in me with like your discussion of objectivity versus subjectivity, right? Like if the goal of having someone without emotions is to have like an objective, to render an objective judgment or have an objective observer. Like I don't think that there's any such thing as an observer without a point of view. You know what I mean? Like what does that even begin to look like?
Yeah.
You know,
Biased, yeah.
It's hard to sort of communicate an idea like that in a character in an animated show. I mean, like Genti, it appears, has emotions, even though we are meant to believe that Deshou is the only arbiter that has had emotions planted into him at this point. But the way we would describe the Genti character is through his emotions, you know, boredom, anger, annoyance, like clearly emotional responses, but we're meant to believe he doesn't have emotions. Like, what does that mean? Not having emotions?
Yeah,
like it's
and this is and is that a writing problem where they've not thought through their own idea of like saying this person does or does not have emotions, or is it just more a case of that they are being they've accounted for it, but then in that case, as you rightly point out, what do we mean by that? I don't know.
It's like, how do you even portray that on a screen? You know, or even in writing, it's tough. But yeah, I don't know. I guess though, in terms of like the sort of rules of engagement that the show sets out, I mean, I think, you know, you would choose someone like Deshou for the reasons that you pointed out, through ability to relate and understand. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'll reiterate what I also said about the earlier episodes of Death Parade, which is that the show, at least up until the episodes we've just seen, which I think are the point where the show is starting to really faff around, is really testing my patience, but I'll explain why later. Those earlier episodes seem to almost have this self-critical lens about them, where they pointed out various scenarios in which this judgment system that's in place does not like account for necessary variables or even is fallible. And that's perhaps the point in that no system can be infallible. I mean, you think, for example, like if you, this might sound strange, but if you go back to like the 1970s and you were writing, for example, as a sci-fi author about like AI and judgments and all that, then yeah, and if the AI, for example, could like judge people, well, we're there today where we have algorithms that do things like rate people's suitability for jobs and all that. But how many times have algorithms been noted lately to have bias in them, such as racial bias, because they are still the creations of human hands? So, yeah, I think that maybe that's also a writing problem in the show, and it's a less pronounced one than the stuff I take issue with, because I think it's just one of those difficult things to avoid, where you, as you rightly say, how do you write something without emotion? Because by that virtue, we have things like Nono enjoying alcohol, and she seems to be like having pleasure from that, but pleasure and joy is an emotion. She should be drinking that alcohol and be something a bit like this.
I mean, why would you even drink alcohol, right? If you're an emotionless being, like, what would it? I mean, your brain would have to be so different. You couldn't experience pleasurable feelings in your brain. You know, I mean,
One other thing as well is I think there have been, this is completely anecdotal from my time studying psychology when I was much younger, but I'm fairly confident that there are examples of serial killers who themselves, maybe psychopaths even, who don't have emotional responses, and then they go on to do what they do. So maybe the idea of having emotions is not so that it's actually to minimize the amount of mistakes one makes. Because, I mean, we can think, for example, back to that woman in the first episode, and all the things she did, like, and if you looked at it from an emotional perspective, she was, you know, awful to him. But there's mitigating circumstances based on her fear, anger, suffering, etc. If you don't have emotional understanding, then how would you know that? So, I think overall, like in the toss-up between if I would have the arbiters have emotions or not, I would say yes. But it also, as I say, depends on why they're even doing this to begin with, because who knows? I mean, we meet who I think is the god patron, or like, sorry, the owner of the bar, whatever, this old fucking
Yes.
dude.
The pool
Um,
guy. The
and
billiards
I
man.
and I honestly just have a feeling that he's up to some shady shit.
Yes. Yes, of course. He's wearing
Hmm.
glasses. That's an anime villain trope for sure. So I have a big dumb theory that
Hmm.
might how do you call it? Explain or account for what you're saying. Like what is the goal here? Like it doesn't seem like
I
we're
mean,
moving toward a big end goal.
our
Um
our podcast USP, unique selling point, is big dumb theories. So fire away,
mhm,
Doc.
mhm. So you're right in that we haven't really been given a lot in terms of what's her face? What is her name? Um
Nona.
oh man. Yep. No, Nona's like objectives. We know that she's sneaking around behind the old man's back, moving things around, sending killers to Decim to judge. Well, Decim and Onna. Um, but we don't really know what she's doing. But one thing that has happened over time is Onna, who you know is, I guess, think Chiyuki, which is not revealed for a couple more episodes, but she's realized over the course of this that that she is in fact dead.
Well,
And what if,
what if?
you know how a single episode of this show is a very intense way to sort of evaluate a soul by putting them in kind of a pressure cooker? What if
Episode 6 certainly evaluated my soul.
yeah, right. What if this whole show is just Nona doing an experiment on a kinder, more compassionate, gentle way to evaluate a soul? And it's Chiyuki / Onna. And, you know, because sort of her arc in terms of how she's discovered things about herself and she remembered something. You know, that's the first thing that happens in these Death Parade episodes. Like a guy will remember something in the middle of the game. She'll remember a book that she read or whatever. And then
Mm.
they realize they're dead. She is just by episode 7 or 8 realized she's dead. So that would mean that by the end, she'll be judged based on her whole kind of time at the bar at Quindecim. So what if that's the thing? It's
I have a mild hole to puncture into that, which is the existence of Mayu and her being kept behind.
oh, there's a ton of that. I mean, like there would be a lot of extraneous content. There would be like
Well, Mayu's extraneous content.
right. Genti doesn't really matter. Quinn is very like, what the hell are they? You know, that kind of thing. Well, I guess you could say like that it's all real, but the thing with Nona is the real experiment and not actually the thing with Decim.
Hmm.
So that you could have, you know, everything else is happening, but for different reasons. So but the original theory was like everything is happening in service of Chiyuki and her judgment, but perhaps that's only just that's what Nona's up to, and the rest of it is also still happening. But
the only experiment I can think of is how one gets away with getting their one-shot pilots turned into an entire series and then wasting the potential it offers. But well,
that's so harsh on the whole show.
I am going to get into that because honestly, like my ire does not end at episode 6. It has. I feel I got really annoyed by episode 5 and also episode 7. Not to the same extent, mind you. I should probably not be so histrionic about it, but believe me, I do have complaints because there's some ideas in here that I thought that would be great if you did something with that, but you pissed it away. But we'll get to that. Anyway, do you have anything else to add to that question, Doc?
Not really. I mean, I think it's a good question, but yeah, TLDR, I think the premise of the question and of the show is just kind of a false one. That, you know, writing these like beings once you anthropomorphize a spiritual being, I mean, they're gonna be emotional, have emotions to some degree.
They're gonna want to
I
drink
guess
wine.
unless they're like a sociopath, like you said, but they're not really doing that, and
Nah.
so and there's I don't know, but no, I think we have covered that question as well as we can.
Mm-hmm. All right, then. Well, that takes us to the end of our patron questions. So thank you very much, Racken, for dropping those to our in tray. Now is as good a time as any for us to move on to talking points. And who boy, do I have some. I do have a very positive one, though, and I'm debating if I want to deploy that first or save that for the end.
Well, before we get to talking points, do you mind if we take a quick break?
Yeah, go for it, my friend. We'll be
right.
back in just a little bit.
Okay, we are back. Thank you for your patience. Now, Shadon, the floor is yours.
Oh boy, right. So pick it where we left off. I'm still debating. Like, I mean, I should have really thought about this during the intervening time here. Do I want to play my nice talking point now, or do I want to save it for the end so I can try and end this discussion without thinking to myself that I really, really hate what's happened with this show, in my opinion? You know what? I've not ended. It's been a while since we've ended an episode of a pod where I've just been basically full of bile, piss, and vinegar. So I'm going to deploy my good point now and let the hate just flow through me for the rest of it. Because why not? That could be fun in its own right. But all joking aside, I do think there is actually a really cool thing in this episode, or one of these episodes. I think it might very well have been episode 5, actually, which is where we get introduced to the old man playing billiards, pool, snooker, whatever you want to call it, with Nona. And what the point I'm going to make here is that they are playing, firstly, they're playing billiards, which is, of course, something we've seen already in Death Billiards, and actually makes a return in episode 7 where we get the backstory of another arbiter. So it's a repeat, like, we've seen it before at this point.
Not just billiards with the planets.
Yes, which means I now get to make this marks the second time I will reference Red Dwarf on this podcast.
Nice.
The last time being when we covered Brand New Animal, when I pointed out there was that scene in Red Dwarf where Winnie the Pooh got shot, and it reminded me of Winnie the Pooh dying on the baseball field. But in Red Dwarf, there was, of course, an episode called White Hole in which the lead character Lister plays pool with planets in order to seal a white hole. And in Death Parade episode 5, and indeed one of the later ones, they are playing billiards, that is Nona and this old dude, with planets.
Yes.
Except Pluto, because fuck you, Pluto. I don't know why Pluto's not included, but yeah. Probably because it would have made a nice diamond shape. But anyway, the moon is also included as well. So yeah, maybe it's their favorite sailor Senshi. I don't know. Poor sailor Pluto, just gets shot on so much. But anyway, all joking aside, I really like this because it shows the grievous error this entire system is doing, which is that it's trivializing the lives of mortal men for amusement and putting through the gristle mill of playing games when the gravity is so much more than that. Like they've literally taken planets, including Earth, and trivialized them down, like reduced them down to the size of playthings. And I think that really goes to show, like, as a metaphor for how they have trivialized and reduced the complexity of human existence down to something that you can just evaluate in a single pub game afternoon. I think that's a startlingly powerful image, and I think it really goes to show, like, that this system, again, tying with what I've said before, is deeply flawed. I really, really like that. I thought that was a really good moment, and like I say, I don't have much nice to say about these block of episodes, but I do give credit where it's due, and I thought that was great. That's a great use of an existing motif in the show, which is the games, but you're using it to make a new point about the people who are running this place and how they view the patrons who go through it. Insignificant, to be played with and toyed with. Really good moment.
Yeah, I mean, I liked that very much as well. I think episode 6 reinforces this quite a bit, just with the entire framing of it. You know, the souls show up at Genti's. Look at Genti as an arbiter versus Deshou. I mean, they're so different. One respects human life, right? That we see in the basic one's like, I respect people that live full lives. And the other one thinks all humanity are a bunch of idiots. I mean, this sort of random chance that you end up in one place or another is deeply unfair, you know, and you're going to be, your eternal soul will be judged. So I think, yeah, the whole show has been really great about hammering that home. And this idea of like understanding each other, like understanding another human being. I think that you could make a good argument that the show's episodic nature and punctuated backstories are conceptually buttressing that theme, because we are only given some breadcrumbs as viewers of these people's lives, and then they're judged. And a lot of times we might be left thinking like, wait a minute, like, do we really understand them? Do we really know what they deserve eternally here? And like, I don't know. I just think that kind of works on a conceptual level. What may not be satisfying. It may not be as satisfying in terms of like, you know, I really want to get to know these characters more or whatever. But yeah,
I do agree with you. I just don't agree with episode 6 doing that, because it was framed as a comedy rather than what it has been in the other episodes, which is as a character study. Abridged and truncated though it may be by virtue of the short runtime. But anyway,
well, I like the characters still. I don't think that they're dislikable. I love Harada and Mayu. I think they're really funny. Like, they're my favorite. I mean, they're so memorable to me. They're like my favorite two patrons. Well, and then Mayu, I mean, is clearly hanging around. So
God knows why.
Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, you think I'm saying that as like a pejorative, but like God literally only knows why in this show.
True. Well, anyway, God is not even around. Apparently,
unless he's the old man. I don't know.
Well, at one point, Nona says like, well, he's like, hey, play more pool with me, little girl, and she's like, why don't you ask God for someone to come play with you, someone else? And he's like, God is long gone, or something like that. Like, I think he's the closest thing to God, but he's not actually God, according to his own mouth. Maybe he is God in disguise. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Or maybe God is a competing entity. I mean, I think the last time they ever had such a good billiard...
What if God was one of us?
Oh, justice. I mean, I think the last time they ever had such a good billiards game was when Minnesota Fats came through, but well,
oh, I don't know who that is. You got it.
I only know I only know of that through a video game which had him as like but he's actually a real billiards player who I believe now is probably more than likely dead. And if you're not Minnesota Fats and you happen to also somehow inexplicably be listening to this podcast, I am terribly sorry. Anyway, That's my point, so I'll move over to you, Doc.
Um, well, I actually gave one of my points as a rejoinder to what you just said. The whole more than one way to judge business. I mean, in episode 7, um, I think it's in episode 7. Is that the one where we discover Decim's hobby or treasured thing? It's like putting together the dummies of the good people that have come through and putting their clothes back on them and kind of leaving them as they were because he doesn't want the bodies to be totally discarded. Was that episode 7?
Yes, I believe it was.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
I mean,
So
if ever he wanted to move into a different career, he could always be setting up crash test simulations.
good. You could. There's apparently an endless field of used dummies.
That can pee, apparently.
Heaven really. That's right. That's right. Okay. What was I gonna say? The train is coming off the track. Oh, I mean, so I just liked. This was an interesting notion to me that, Decim cared so much about preserving the body, or the dummy that was a stand-in for the body, because he said he didn't want these people them to be like they never were, which is interesting because I mean I think a lot of people who are like really strict dualists, the clean separation from mind and body, right? Or body and soul, however you want to phrase that, would think that like whatever is really you is nothing to do with your body. It's all about like what's in here, or some other sort of like configuration of spiritual elements or whatever, but that are not the body, and that like you could take that out of the body and it would still be you. You could put it in another body or put it in a computer or have it be floating incorporeally and that would still be you there. But Decim doesn't really, I don't know, he doesn't really seem to think so. Like it feels like he believes that something about who they are is kind of lost when the body and soul are decoupled. And I actually have a lot of sympathy with that. I mean, I think that I don't know if everything about, and it's hard to say, of course, because I've only ever lived in a human body, but as a it's a thought experiment. I don't really know if like the essential you would remain intact if your whatever it is that's not strictly physical, if you believe there is anything that's not that, right, is yanked out of you and either floating free or sort of imbued or incarnated in something else. Like I think there's something important about the union of a body and a soul / mind. Spoilers, I guess I do believe in a non-physical sort of element of a human being, if you want to call it spiritual, psychic, whatever. But like I think what makes you a unique individual entity is tied up in that joining together, and that if you were to like just put your brain in a computer or turn over your brain into data, right, I think that there would be something lost that wasn't just the physical body part. Like I remember reading philosophy as an undergrad, being like experiencing like ice cold fear reading David Hume when he said, I can't remember what book it was in, but he said that all we are is the sum total of our experiences. And for whatever reason, that just chilled me just through the bone. Like, and because it just sounded so, something about it made me feel so despondent. And even, so to this day, I mean, I've changed so much about what I believe is true about reality and the mind and knowledge and everything like that since I was a 19-year-old. But I think I still do kind of like buy into the premise of this show that like whether you want to call them souls or not, but that there's sort of something like that within people. I don't know if it persists, what the nature of it is, or anything like that, but yeah, there you go. I thought that was a really interesting bit in episode 7 that it was kind of gesturing at this, that the body, at least one of the characters in the show, thinks that like physical body is really important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it could also point to Decim's own like emotions, like that he, has kept them around because they're probably the only company he keeps. He forms attachments to them and all that. I mean, he was, after all, like very supportive of the pair of the couple in the first episode. So it's it could be a curious quirk of his own behavior and like his own construction as an arbiter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think for me, like I'm maybe dwelling too much on the metaphysics of it, but I have to wonder again, like how much of this is this actual physical reality as we know it? Does that even matter if it's not, though, to be fair? How does this all work, all this sort of thing? But I do agree, like that. I think that it's a neat element of his character that he keeps them around. If nothing else, I think it reflects on him how these people have a lasting impact, and maybe that runs counter to the philosophy of or like the ideology of the people running this place, because they're just there for the judgments. But so why keep them around afterwards? Even though
they're meant to forget,
even though to go back to Rackham's question, one could also know that the ability to judge another person's character is based on the cumulative experience and philosophy you hold in yourself. So let's say, like, hypothetically, there's an episode of this show where Decim is dealing with like the 10th cheating couple of his career, similar to the first one. Now, those ones that have come before will inform his experience and his view.
Yeah.
And so maybe you could take that as part of like why he's a superior arbiter, or could potentially be a superior arbiter, because he views his previous experiences as valuable and doesn't want to discard them.
Yeah.
Although one then could also,
I mean, I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
And one could also then contrarily say, actually, no, you need to judge everything on its own merits.
Exactly. You could become burned out or jaded. Like you could become a Genti and be like, all humans suck because look at this. Over the years, I've seen awful people or whatever. You know what I mean? There's definitely that, like that. It could break you. I mean, it's this whole like the Nietzschean thing. Like what is he like either the greatest or one of the greatest like virtues or assets of being a human being is the ability to forget. Otherwise, we couldn't go on living if we remembered all the shitty things that happened to us.
I mean, after some of the anime I've seen, I'm very glad for that fact. Right. My next talking point, then, this is where I get into the bitchiness. I'm going to move away from episode 6 for a bit, because I still have some nails to hammer in that coffin, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm going to talk about something that really annoyed me about episode 5. And the reason this annoys me is because I couldn't help but think to myself that I wish they'd done something else with it. So for the context in episode 5, we have like this dude and this kid turn up. And right away, Decim's like, something's weird. There's a glitch in the Matrix. I don't get this. Something's off.
Yeah, right.
And it basically turns out that this is a mystery shopper experience. No, really. They're doing it to test it. These two are not actually. These two are not actually dead people. One of them is Ginty disguised as a kid, and he tries to have a fight with Decim, but he brought water bubbles. He brought the Hammond bubble spray to a string fight, and it didn't work out for him. Curious choice of power for someone who's
a West Ham fan.
Oh, Jesus. Curious choice of power for someone whose general color scheme was orange, and I thought it was going to be fire related, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not really relevant. The point is, though, like that happens, and then the other guy was just like basically programmed to freak the fuck out and threaten to stab Ginty, disguised at this point. And so they wanted to test like how he would, like, if Decim would be able to subdue the patron, like how he would handle this situation. Essentially, again, mystery shopper. I mean, Nona might as well just literally say those words at the end. But what got me, what really boiled my piss, is that the guy, before he's revealed to be nothing more than, as I say, a fake, he says like, I've been here before. And
Right.
as soon as that happened, I was so excited. And I freely admit this complaint of mine may very well
Hmm.
just be my own subjective bias here. And you probably say I'm going to be like, what an amazing concept that would be if it actually was a real person who had been reincarnated and come back a
I
second
know.
time.
I know.
You could have done so many amazing things. It could have had a lot to say about how we view death. Like,
Yeah.
I thought like my previous life was fucked up. I got reincarnated by you guys, and I did better, and I'm still back to be judged again. Like, how many times must I go?
I
And they
know.
didn't do
I
it.
know.
They pissed it away on a mystery shopper thing, which I'm like, and which only really in my mind serves to end up setting up Ginty as a character. And I don't actually dislike Ginty. I think he serves a purpose in like
Hmm.
because of his contrast to Destiny, even though I think episode 6 was a complete waste of his time and mine. But beside the point, I cannot believe that they had such a gem of an idea to continue what they've been doing in this show, and they didn't use it. They've wasted it. And I hate episode 5 for that. I hate it when shows like have promises like that where they suggest we're going to do something really, really profound and interesting with
I
the
know.
concept we've got, and they didn't.
And it's just like a Trojan horse for an info dump, you know, because you end up learning all this stuff about like what arbiters are and, you know, more about like the world they live in or whatever. But it was just sort of boring. Like I found the whole thing, even the fight, you know, it just kind of didn't do it for me.
This
It was all
isn't.
very like whatever, and it's just really info dumpy.
I mean, this is a wider problem with the show in that a lot of what happens into it seems to not be aware of its own trappings and tries to build tension on the basis of that when none can be found. Like, if he had stabbed the kid in the head and it was actually a legitimate kid,
Hmm.
they're dead. Do they go to another bar? Like, what are the stakes here? What happens as a result? It isn't like I don't feel a sense of tension about this. And this is going to relate to a complaint I have about episode 8 as well, so put a pin in that for later. Um, and it also, I think, speaks to my problem with episode 6. And episode 6 felt like a story that didn't need to be in Death Parade the show.
Such a such a curmudgeon.
I am a
Telling you.
curmudgeon. I'm
So
always
cranky,
bitter. I'm always
needlessly.
cranky, angry. I mean, but yeah, that's the thing that I hate about episode 5, and it feels symptomatic of the wider feeling I have about Death Parade, which is I like the first 4 episodes a lot. But what I was hoping for was like, okay, you've got a good start, you've got to start delivering on this now. And had
Right.
they done what I thought would have done in episode 5, I would have been on board with that. But this show's pace has slowed so much. We're now to episode 8, and the clock's running out. What is happening? What is the overall goal of the show? Like, we
Yeah.
know we still haven't learned Chiyuki's name, and I don't give a shit that it's a spoiler because at this
Episode
point,
10.
episode 10. Oh,
Hmm.
okay, cool, whatever. Like, but I mean, like, that's one of the other things that bothers me about the show. Like, is that it's wasting time. There's a reason why when I said before, like I think this was to you off cast, where I was like, if I was the production person who authorized Death Parade to be expanded from Death Billions into a full show and got to episode 6,
Hmm.
I would look back with like thinking, what was I thinking doing that? Because the show's pace has just completely tanked,
It's really
and
slowed down. Yeah.
and they don't have the time to do that. If you've had your one shot thing expanded into 12 episodes, spend those episodes well. How many shows have we covered that have done so much with the same amount of runtime? And this is just pissing it
Well,
away.
how many? I don't know. A lot of the we talk about pacing a fair bit, I think, on here
Well,
because
they've done better than this, that's for sure. But
yeah, I mean, I think I think about half of what we've seen has been paced well, and then half or a little under half has been kind of slow. And sometimes the slow burn works for me. Like I thought episode 8 really worked. I was totally locked in to everything that was going on. Like it is weird though to make it a two-parter now at episodes 8 and 9 when you feel like maybe a couple of the weaker episodes you could have jettisoned and like moved this up. I don't know, but like I really like episode 8. But I can't deny, I mean, it is a really slow burn. And then episode 5 is just kind of whatever. And 7 was also a little slow. Although I don't feel like any of the episodes have been, apart from moments in episode 5, I don't feel like they've been a total waste of time. but I mean, I'm defending the show a lot. I don't think the show has been necessarily like a home run or anything. I don't think it's been bad uh so far. I think it's been good, but I do see, like you were pointing out, definitely like missed opportunities, and they don't really have a firm hand on the wheel, it seems, a lot of the time, with
Yeah.
the pacing especially.
Yeah. It just feels like we're just going to do whatever we want now. And I'm like, you can't really do that with a 12 episode show. Like, go in and have some focus. You had some good ideas going in the first 4 episodes, expand
Mm-hmm.
on them. You literally were on the cusp of going even further with episode 5 and turning that into something truly meaningful. Because I like when people talk about reincarnation and religion, for example, like I can't recall ever having seen a work where it discusses the idea. I mean, maybe I've missed something here, maybe I'm forgetting, but like none in my recent memory where they discuss the idea of someone who's gone through it like twice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is a fascinating idea.
Yes.
And I wish they'd done something with it, but it's wasted because mystery shopper shit. So
No, it was really like it seemed like it was in service of conceits that we care less about, like bringing in
mm,
another, attractive male character, and um having a lot of time with Nona, and yeah, and then a lot of world building that wasn't delivered in the most entertaining way.
yeah, I mean there are actually too many characters in the show, in my opinion, for its
I know,
short
and they
runtime.
keep coming up. Like Quinn. I'm like, man, another new character here. Like,
For my money, they should have essentially had 4 characters, which would have been Decim, Chiyuki,
mm,
Nona, and then God Guy.
right.
That's it. I mean, I still think Jinty has a purpose, but I mean,
Sure.
unfortunately,
Sure.
unfortunately,
A
when it
whole
comes to
episode?
efficient, I mean,
Yeah.
when it comes to efficient writing, one has to, sometimes make hard choices,
Yeah, exactly.
and that
Like,
and that
give
part
him
of
the amount of screen time that like Clavis gets.
yeah, I mean, that's
Clavis.
part I think of the problem in Death Ray's execution in these later episodes, where it feels very indulgent, um, indulgent in a way that is not conducive for the show's health
Mm,
or for my enjoyment of it. Like I've got all these characters in mind, and I'm like, that's great, but you don't have time to put them in there. So jettison them.
mm-hmm,
Focus.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I expected this to be. I think I expected more captivating character writing, by the way people talked about it, I guess, than what we're getting. I guess I should have thought, okay, this is about the afterlife and reincarnation. It's going to be a little conceptual, but um, I don't. It's kind of a like we're talking about 3 shows that are various levels of like big concepts. Uh, so I don't know. The character writing up to this point has been so, nothing incredible. So I can't say that I am like sitting on like the edge of my seat, have waiting with bated breath to watch the next Death Parade at this point.
Mm.
But for Odd Taxi, definitely.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
slightly, less so for Sunny Boy. But I admit I am curious to see what the fuck is happening.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I should be fair. Like when I was talking about indulgence before, like Sunny Boy is absolute indulgence as a show, but it's cohesive in its indulgence, and it doesn't feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's promising one thing and then delivering something else.
Yeah,
Say what you will
I
about
get
Sunny
you.
Boy, where like we could say we have no idea what the fuck it's about, but at least it is consistently about whatever it's the fuck it's about week on week.
Yeah, it has an
Mm.
extremely strong like uh aesthetic and like storyline presentation wise, its identity is very strong. So
Mm. All right. Well, that's my point anyway about episode 5 and the piss wasting of potential. So over to you, Doc. What's your next talking point?
um my next talking point is, I'll just give a throwaway one. That when in episode 6 during the Twister game, when everyone is frozen, everyone being Mayu and Harada, and then Harada gets to have his sort of like shonen, like, don't discount idols moment, and he's like breathing heavy and like powers up to like burst out of the ice shell, and he also bursts out of his clothes, and he's now just in his boxers. I'm just like, yes. I was
Dude
laughing
wishes
so hard.
I
Fantastic.
mean, from my perspective, dude fucking wishes he was a Sailor Star or the Three Lights. He ain't
Yeah.
that. No, not by a fucking mile. All right.
Made me laugh so hard.
I'm gonna come back to episode 6 in a bit. I want to talk about episode 8. Now, I need to preface this talking point with the most massive caveat possible, which may as well mean that I don't even talk about it, which is fuck you, Death Parade, for not telling us ahead of time that this was a two-parter. Because it makes it difficult for me now to make any conclusive judgment about how I feel about episode. Because I've got to watch episode 9, and yeah, I made the decision ultimately not to watch episode 9 in advance this because we'd have to talk about that as well, and it would just take up too much time. So we're damned if we do, and damned if we don't here. So what I'm about to say, you could probably say, "Well, just wait for episode 9; it'll sort itself out." So in episode 8, we have a kid and we have a detective. The kid may or may not have murdered someone as part of like his desire to protect them from being abused. The detective's doing his own shit. By the way, I recognize the detective's voice actor. I just can't quite place it. I think he might be the guy who, because he passed away relatively recently, but you can look that up. I'm fairly certain he was the voice actor of Kagura in Blaze Blue, amongst. No, I remember now. He was, what was his fucking name in Eureka 7? The captain guy. What the fuck was
Holland.
his name? No, yes. He voiced him. I'm 99% certain of it. But anyway, while you're looking that up, just to confirm if I'm right or wrong. So they've arrived and they're playing air hockey. And fine, all well and good. Got no issue with air hockey here. But the episode places the episode places a lot of focus on their reactions to the fact they don't realize they're dead, and they, are fighting to go home and solve their respective cases. Like the detective's wife was murdered at some point, and since he's a detective and solved it, that's obviously a big grievance to this. And the kid is worried about the detective finding out about him, being they killed someone potentially because he's got a bloody knife in a satchel bag.
Right.
And not one of this actually registered with me, and I'll tell you why, because I couldn't get past the fact that they're
heartless fiend.
Because they're dead. Their desires to go put things right isn't going to happen unless the show, without any foreshadowing, pulls a curveball and sends them back immediately to go fix it, which I think would be a real arse pull. Now, one could then point out, okay, in episode 9, Shads,
what show did you think he was in?
Eureka 7.
Okay, so you're all right. So it's Keiji Fujiwara, and he did die in April of last year.
Yeah, that was it.
Let's see. Huge,
phenomenally good voice actor.
Not in Erica 7. In Erica 7 AO, he's Renton, all grown up. But I don't. Unless this is done the Japanese name for Erica 7 for some reason. I'm all right. I'm gonna keep investigating. You continue.
All right. So you might say, well, they're gonna find out at the end. Sorry, Doc. Doc was like, ooh.
Yeah, I'm annoyed because they did do the thing that I thought that they were gonna do. So yes, he is indeed Holland Novak.
There we go.
And then it's so funny that guy voices adult Renton in the sequel also. Very good.
Amazing. Shout outs to him because he was always a fucking great voice actor.
So good.
I mean, yeah, for whatever bitchiness I have about this story that's being told in Death Parade, he really gives the detective that hard-boiled edge to his voice. It works for him.
It does.
So anyway, to the point, you might then say to me, okay, Shads, calm your tits down. Episode 9, they'll learn they're dead. And they'll be the lesson will be, well, you've got to sort out your mortal affairs before you go. You've got to you can't delay, all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. You only get one chance. And I'd be like, okay, fair cop. But the episode seems to me be framed in such a way as to really sell the tension of them trying to solve their respective, problems of, the abused friend and the dead wife. And again, the show is about people who are dead. It's too late. I can't feel any tension about their conflict. Like, if the detective catches this kid and it's like, you murdered someone, the fuck does it matter? Unless they make a point, I suppose, about to gel with like the idea of judgment from peers and all that. I don't know. But it doesn't seem to me to be framed in such a way, this particular episode, as to be about like the fact that they don't realize, like they're doomed ultimately to fail in their quests because it's too late for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be framed very much in a way where it's like there's a hint of a possibility they might get that, but there's no foreshadowing to suggest it. And so therefore, when they're playing this game and there's supposed like the tension of them like fighting out, like, I'm gonna make sure I win, and I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care because because the entire show's premise defeats that.
To me, the tension was more about like the mystery of finding out the rest of what happened in their life. Like did Shimada, I think it is, did Shimada kill someone for real? And like, did Detective Tatsumi, like, did he also kill someone? I mean, they do. It's confirmed, like, at the end when Chiyuki Onna gets the memories, she's like, 2 murderers. So like, is it like, did the kid end up being the person who killed the detective's wife? We don't know who abused. Is it going to be something that crazy, or will they just kill different people? You know what I mean? Like, so that, to me, like, that's where all the kind of suspense was, is like, slowly, like, because in the beginning of the episode, you only think that there's one murderer, someone who killed someone is in the, and so I'm like, oh man, okay, this guy who looks all hard, maybe he's Yakuza and he's the killer, but that seems so obvious. That's what they want you to think. It's got to be the kid. And then the kid finds a knife and you're like, oh fuck, it is the kid. But then you find out like the detective's wife was murdered. It's like, oh, he did it for revenge. Like the knife must be in there for some other reason. He can't remember. What is it? Like, I want him to be proved innocent. You know what I mean? So that's where the suspense came from for me. But I get what you mean about like, their game not mattering to us. I mean, it certainly matters to them. And we see their emotional states intensify and heighten. So we don't know what they're going to do. They might do something crazy to each other. And the voice acting just sold it to me. So I was like totally in. I mean, I thought it really was pretty gripping. Despite knowing, like you said, I mean, they're not going to get to go back and do anything, but I just really want to know what happens.
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to know what happens. And the reason that I don't want to know what happens is because this to me feels like they've stopped telling stories about Death Parade, the show, but rather stories that could be done in any other anime. Like, why are we not concerning ourselves with what's happening here and now? Why should I be interested in something that's happening in the real world in terms of it being a prominent feature of this show? I like, if you want to tell a story about a detective who's finding out about his dead wife, and that's the thing you're emphasizing, as opposed to the fact that, as I say, this is all ultimately futile, or what it means for them now that they're dead, tell that story in a different show. This is also my complaint with episode 6.
Well, I disagree, because I think that these stories being... Well, okay. I have a couple things. One, you're being a hypocrite here because
oh shit, son!
You're saying
right in the heart. Boom.
That's like, most of the time you're like, man, there's not enough backstory on these characters. I wish I cared more, but they don't give us enough backstory. And now they're giving us double the backstory, a backstory that is intriguing and full of mystery to the point that, it requires 2 episodes. And it's also being informed by how the characters are acting in the present, not just the flashback. So we're getting to know these characters. And my second thing is that I I think that this is the nature of what these stories are is important because this kind of judgment is important for Decim to make. Because we saw at this end of episode 7, Nona fished out the 2 souls and was like, we must send these to Decim. Like, I'm picking these. These are the ones. It's got to happen. So it's these 2 people, these killers. And he knows it's a big deal. And Chiyuki knows it's a big deal. Like, this is different. Like, everything up to this point has been, like, all the negative traits they've been judging, nothing has been illegal that's been done. They've all been like, are you a good person? Like, because of your emotional responses.
Not illegal. Harada was murdered by comical love heart bomb.
No, he didn't do anything illegal though.
Okay.
We're not judging Kana, right? Not Kana, but her sister, Lisa. We're not judging Lisa. We're judging Harada, and like, so he didn't do anything illegal.
No,
but this is
right,
2 crime-ass crimes. You know what I mean? And like, Will, these are real criminals, right? I mean, and so like, how will Decim respond? Like, because Nona is like, you know, she's sort of leading him on the phone call. She's like, it's just like any other time. Human's a human. And like, will he respond that way? Will the acts be so heinous that he can't make a more holistic judgment about their life?
Okay. I'll answer your points in reverse, which is the one you made about like Decim's judgment. That ties into what I said before about like that I can't conclusively complain about this without having seen episode 9. Because you're right, if Decim giving a judgment on that something as complicated as all of this is important, and we need the fullness of context there. To your first point, where you said, about backstory, I actually don't think this is backstory. This is story. That's my issue. I hope that makes it clearer.
I'm confused.
Like, okay, so with it being when I say backstory is in service of what's happening right here, right now in the show, which is the the conflict between the kid and the detective. And to go back to like previous episodes, like in the very first one, that couple, their backstory, their history informed their behaviors right there and now. And the outcome of their behaviors here and now in the Death Parade place, in the Death Parade bar, was what was important. But what episode 8 is doing is it's framing the backstory as what's actually important and what's, as in like, we're focusing on as if they're actually going to solve these things when they're not. And
that last part I feel like is a leap that you might be making. Like, I mean, it is certainly spending more time on the flashbacks, but I don't think it's because it's going to divert from the format or that it's leading you to think that they'll get to do anything. I mean, I think they've already both done stuff. They have already killed people. We know that. So like, they think what they think is they need to go back and kill someone, but they've already done it. They just don't remember that part yet.
I think ultimately I'll have to just, as I say, to go back to my very beginning point, I'm gonna have to wait and see, but this didn't land with me because of the fact that, again, maybe this is just bleed through from my frustrations of the previous episodes, but I wanted to focus first and foremost on what's happening in that room. And I understand that we need backstory, and I absolutely still do stick with my point that, hey, let's give more fleshed out backstory to inform the behavior of the characters in that room there and then. 100% do believe that. But there's just something about the way that episode is framed, then maybe I'm not explaining it properly, that just felt to me like that they were more interested in telling the stories of these two in their real lives rather than telling the story of them in the Death Parade room right now.
Oh man, see, I disagree with that so much. So because like we get so many scenes of them just talking, like we get like a portrait, like a really well fleshed out portrait, I think, of what the detective was like before his wife was killed. He seems very fatherly. He seems very much like, someone you can rely on. Like, I'll take care of you. I can lead you through this. Like, trust me. But clearly, we see what he's like after his wife is murdered. Like, he's become kind of unhinged. He is, this sort of mad look about him and has this like total focus on getting revenge and like killing this person that he believes has murdered his wife. And, you know, we see a similar arc for Shimada, although I think he's a little bit less well defined than Detective Tatsumi. But I feel like, you know, we get so like scenes of them like in the, you know, in the bathroom, like finding the knife and being scared out of his mind. Like, you know, we do get some for Shimada because we feel like he used to just be this scared kid before this anger took hold of him. And we kind of see like in the room that they are, we sort of see little kind of microcosm of like before this watershed moment in their life and after this watershed moment in their life, in the context of being in this room and needing to get out. At first wanting to help each other, wanting to figure it out, and then becoming more selfish because in their mind they still need to carry out this murder that they both did carry out in their real life. They just haven't remembered it yet. So yeah, so I don't know. I think these are two of the like the stronger characterizations. So yeah, that's where I sit on it.
I'll reserve judgment for when we get to episode 9, when we do our final podcast on Death Parade. But yeah, it just isn't landing for me. Like, I'm not going to lie about it.
It's a slow episode though, so it might just be super slow, not as interesting. So
yeah. Anyway, over to you, Doc. Do you have any other talking points to check out?
I may have in like talking to you here, I may have brought up the rest of them. I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. So
well, I'm not done yet.
Yeah, all right. Talk away.
Let me throw more darts at the board. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to episode 6 and just put another nail in the coffin. I'm gonna come out with this just to be blunt. I hate the fact it's Twister. I hate the fact Twister is the game in this, and I hate it for a number of reasons.
It's a party game. It feels like a pub game or a game that you would play like taking drinks at home.
No,
you know?
I have never been to a pub that Twister has been a game available to play there, and that's probably for the best, I would say.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. That would not be. I feel like that would be quite a lawsuit waiting to happen. But definitely like a drinking type of game. I don't know. Like it felt like of a piece with the other games.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think it is of a piece of the other games. I'll explain why. So let's go through the games we've seen thus far, and I'm going to include Death Billiards in this list here. So we, of course, have billiards. We have darts. We have bowling, air hockey, arcades. Yeah. Am I missing anything else? Because we didn't get a game in episode 5. It never got that far.
Yeah, or 7.
So okay, so I've listed all those off there. Now,
I think it's all of them. Yeah.
One common element of all of these, and I know you're going to protest, so give me a moment to explain, that is not shared with Twister, is that they are all games in some form or another of skill. Now, hold your horses. You're probably going to... Hold your horses. Hold your horses. I'm not saying that Twister is not a game of physical skill, of course, because it is. But it's a game that ultimately, for one, is only about physical skill and not about any sort of, how shall I say, athletic precision, if you want to call it. I don't know how you describe it, because I mean, you obviously have to aim, like, and I think part of the problem is as well with Twister is you get given through random chance what you have to go for. Now, you might say card games are like that, but most card games, if not all of them, even shit like Uno, has an element of strategy in it. What cards do you play?
Right.
And that's the thing that I think that bothers me about the use of Twister here, because it's not a game that is in any way designed to tease out the darker side of human nature, as the games are intended to do. Now, you might say, well, what happens in the episode? I'm like, yeah, they had to do something that no Twister game does, which is turn into a bottomless pit.
Well, but they all the games have that element where they become about like puncturing organs or like, beating each other up, that is not like an element of the actual game. Also, tell me
Yeah.
your strategy in darts. I want to know your complicated dart strategy.
Well, the thing in darts in this one though is that they did have the ability to willfully inflict pain on the other
Hmm.
person. In Twister, they just get given what they're given. So where's the key difference here. The Twister game in this has no meaningful way for the other person to harm the other in such a way as the other games in Death Parade have been shown to do, where you can do like that kind of thing with where is it about winning the game or is it about hurting the other person?
Right. No, that's true. I mean, because even when you step on the ice button, you're both iced.
Yep.
It's such a different thing. It's also at a different setting. So maybe Genty's games are all different in that way.
Oh
We
no, I
don't
don't
know.
want to. I don't want to see Death Parade's version of Cards Against Humanity. No, thank you.
Right.
No,
It's
thank
just a
you.
pinata thing or pin the tail on the donkey
Oh, you hit
instead
you
of
hit you
pub
hit
games.
you hit the pinata and the other person gets hit.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can see that
Exactly.
happening. They just start spraying candy from their mouth or something like that. But that's the thing that's the thing I hate about the fact that Twister's used here because it you said it's a party game, and the thing about a lot of party games is that they're principally fun first, strategy last.
Hmm.
Um, I think part of the thing that makes the Death Parade games interesting, especially the ones like the fighting game one or darts or pool, is that they open up that possibility of do I like where you have these options to. I mean, we said like for example about the darts ones where
Hmm.
they could just refuse to play by throwing them at the floor.
Yeah, they add an artificial element of strategy to the game itself
Yeah.
by like layering the shit on top of it.
Yeah, and even billiards, although it never really did this, and I wish it did,
Hmm.
you can play strategic shots to place the cue ball behind a ball of your own color and prevent the other person from shooting. I mean, how do fouls play into this? Like if you foul, do you like have a heart palpitation in this? But that's still interesting to think about. Like there is a strategy involved in the game where do you play to win? Do you play to hurt your opponent? Are those things intrinsically tied together, or do you just willfully hurt them through this? And the Twister game has none of that. It
Yeah, that
is
element's not there. You're right.
it's
That is
it,
yes.
it's rubbish, and I hate it. Um,
It just is sort of in keeping with how the episode was tonally different for me from the
yeah. Well,
other parts of the show.
like I said though, that's why I don't feel it's a Death Parade story. I came into Death Parade expecting this. I mean, you've seen the fucking episodes we've had before and how serious they were dealing with things like spousal abuse and all that.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying that you can't do comedic stuff, but when you veer hard right into this, and it's all this like really weak comedy, and even the game is ill-conceived choice for it. I mean, I agree that it makes sense for the story they were trying to tell now, but it's not a story that feels in line with everything else we've had, where it just feels so fucking trivial. Like it just, I hated it. I hated every part of episode 6.
Such a grump. You're gonna hate Trigun when we revisit it.
I like Trigun, except for
I
the
know you
fact
do
that
now.
except the
You
fact that
haven't seen
Bastion
it.
kill knives at the end, but that's a discussion for a different day.
You're gonna
I
hate
know
it
you
in
and
whole
I,
new ways.
you and I are gonna have raging arguments over the fact that Vash did not kill knives at the end.
Oh, I know. I mean,
I,
yeah. Well, that's the ultimate
although in
consistency
my
of character.
although in my opinion, I think the show was, I think Knives actually won at the point that he got Legato to get Vash to kill him. At that point, the battle was basically
Sure.
done, and everything else after that point was just the full stop to the sentence. But stay tuned for a future Trigon podcast. Anyway,
Exactly. Yes.
anyway, right, okay. So that's that point about episode 6. The final thing I'm going to say about episode 6 in general is I actually want to. This is my way of worming out and actually saying something positive to end this with. I want to talk about Ginty for a second. Jin.
It is Ginty. It is a hard G, not a soft G.
I know he's a hard G, but just
He's
how
a
he looks.
hard
But anyway,
G.
he's a hard G. I know that.
He's 151 Mal users have him on their favorite characters list.
Wow. I hope. Do they keep popping into their little fan club and turning the lights on every now and again? It's been a while. Anyway, I actually like him in a vacuum. I just don't like how he's used. Because I think he serves as a reasonable contrast to Decim, and I think it goes to show like how again the system can ultimately be self-defeating, where people become so detached from seeing this stuff over and over again. I mean, hell, his bored attitude actually perfectly explains the need for new arbiters like Decim to come about. Because if you become cynical, if you become bored of what's happening, if you become like indifferent to your work, to care like to these things that demand a lot of complex thinking, no doubt that he needed replacing. So I think his existence in the show is a worthwhile addition, even though I would still trim him out if given the choice, as to which character I would keep. The problem is that for me, I hated episode 6 so much that I couldn't help but note that his boredom at what was going on made it feel like his boredom at what was going on, honestly, to me reflected like how I felt about the show at that point.
Sure.
And I thought, if the characters are treating this as a boring, mundane thing that they've dealt with so many times, and that's not in of itself being utilized in a meaningful way. I know that it's played for laughs and all that,
yeah,
but I mean,
that's meaningful.
I didn't find it funny because I didn't find
it
was going on funny.
Subjective. Yeah, but like, okay, so like, I don't think you can say it's meaningless when there's a clear intent behind it.
No,
like,
but
it didn't hit for you, but it's not meaningless.
No, it isn't. What I suppose what I mean by that is that it's not in step with the show prior to that, where it feels like it's marching to the same beat, of like being semi to mostly serious. Like, I mean, if they had used Jinty to make the point that he was making bad judgments because he was bored, for example, that would be something. But
well, I mean, I think like his attitudes again are just meant to just underscore the fact that this whole setup is very unfair and arbitrary in the macro. In the micro, it just is funny that he's got such a short fuse and he just gets pissed off so easily at people being dumbasses in his opinion. Like whenever the cat went over to her, like his face made me lose it, man. He was just so annoyed.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
To try and bring us back around and end on a positive note, like I still like him as a character. I like the idea of him in a vacuum. I just wish he had been implemented differently. But I mean, at this point, you've listened to this podcast long enough to know this particular episode. There is to know that I really did not like episode 6. So I suppose, it was inevitable that I was going to feel that way. But Jinty was not part of the. Oh, sorry, James, whatever his fucking name is, I don't care. Jimbo, like his, like him as a character in a vacuum, perfectly fine, got no issues with. And that's everything I have to say.
74 people have Mayu as a favorite character.
Good for them.
Yeah. Dwarfed by Decim, though. Decim has 5,894 favorites.
At the time when I was in college and like people were really into Death Parade, I feel like they in some way, sorry, not Death Parade, Death Note, I meant to say. Oh. And everyone's like really into like, L.
Uh-huh.
I get the feeling that like Decim fits that kind of like character for young people, probably young women especially, like,
sure,
where they thought he was super cool and all that. I like Decim, don't get me wrong. And also I'm in no position.
He's a different
the video.
Like his like L has a like, I know what you mean in terms of like they don't lose their cool and they're like even keel.
I can see people like
he
printing out
hasn't
pictures.
Slept in 7 years. Like
that's true.
He looks super raggedy. Whereas like Decim is the most clean cut and snazzy dresser.
I mean, I meant in the sense like I could see like people printing out pictures and putting them on notebooks at that age and that kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, the reason Al hasn't slept for 7 years is because he just can't write his name anywhere. Dude hasn't got a mortgage. Goes to a hotel and they ask for his first name and his last name and he can't fill it out. I mean, he tries to order pizza online and it's just like, you need to put a proper name and he's like, oh shit. Although he could, of course, just call himself like James Smith or whatever.
Do you want to know how many people now have L as a favorite character?
A substantial number. I'm going to say 10,000.
Higher.
50?
Higher.
250,000.
No. 110,505.
There we go.
Yeah. You would think, well, Light has quite a few.
Oh, no surprises there. Just as a random aside, I know that I haven't actually seen Death Note, but I know the broad strokes of what happens in it.
We should watch.
Oh my god!
It would be such a trip, dude, to watch.
But I want to ask one question. I know that if you write a name in the Death Note, that person dies. What happens
Mhm.
if you write a really common name like John Smith in there?
Well, they never addressed that, Shadon.
I just think to myself like that. I was gonna say Willem Dafoe because I know he played that yokai or whatever it was in the film.
The amazing movie, yes. That movie is so shitty. In a
So
good way, though.
Willem Dafoe, like he looks at the
Yeah.
book and he's like, John Smith, really? I'm gonna be at this for fucking hours. Are you
Yes.
serious, dude?
Yes. Oh my god. Dude,
Anyway.
we might have to watch the show 1 month for one of our shows in
Oh
the new
my
format.
god. Uh, oh well.
Lord.
God help me.
I
Anyway,
know.
that's all I have to say on Death Parade, episodes 5 through 8. Most of it sucked, some of it was good.
Oh,
Put me to sleep, please.
so harsh. Okay. That's all I have to say also. So
Right then.
let's wrap this up.
Right then, let's move on to the ratings.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what? I'm going to let you go second because at least it ends on a positive note. I've been Grouchy McGrouchison all the way through this. Yeah, my abiding complaint about these episodes is it feels like they deviate from what was said by the previous ones. The show does not have time to be faffing around doing, girl pissed herself comedy episodes or wasting potentially great concepts like, hey, this guy got reincarnated twice, or hey, here's these characters obsessing over something they'll ultimately never accomplish, and we offer no foreshadowing that they're ultimately going to realize this. This is all stuff I've talked about and bitched about before. There are good elements to it. It's still well animated. But overall, this has substantially diluted my enthusiasm for the show, and resultantly, I am going to give. I'm going to give Death Parade episodes 5 through 8 2.5 left-hand greens. There you go.
Okay. One thing I forgot to bring up as a talking point. I think at the very end of episode 7, you get the idea that the arbiters and even Nona, like the managers, they're all dummies as well, or at least something like that. Like,
Well,
that
Chiyuki's definitely a dummy. That's for sure.
no,
I'm not even joking. Like she has to be because if she's the same format as the rest of them, then she's also a dummy with a soul inhabiting.
Oh,
Isn't she?
but that's the thing is, like, I think she's a human. That was my theory. She's being judged.
Oh,
Because I think she's a human. Because she learns in that episode she's dead. She
but
learns
I
in
mean,
episode 7 or 8 that she actually died.
but aren't all the patrons themselves dummies inhabited by the souls of their deceased selves? Like, so does that not even? Does
Oh,
that
I
make
see what
it
you
like-
mean. I see what you mean. But, like, yeah, she would have to be, yes. But she's human,
That-
I guess.
If they actually explore that more, that would be really fascinating because that falls almost in some kind of like Dr. Frankenstein's monster thing, because
Yeah.
Decim created her in a sense, but also
Right.
clearly has a thing for her. And how do we? I mean, there's stuff that can be mined from that, but I mean, at this point, I don't trust the show to do anything with the interesting concepts it brings up.
But
So,
she showed up in an elevator. She showed up in an elevator, and they memory wiped her to try to. They're clearly experimenting with the format of judging souls. At least I think. And
the show's definitely experiments with its format. All right, it ain't working.
Chiyuki's like a part of that, right? Or a significant part. And so, yeah, I mean, I just liked this little. I just wanted to bring it up that Quinn was like, they envy the human beings in some ways because they can die and then their souls move on, but we have to just do this job forever. And I feel you, honey.
Mm-hmm.
But I am gonna rate the show 3.5 laughing skull air hockey tables out of 5, because on the merits mainly of episodes 6 and 8, the pacing did take a hit, but I thought episode 6 was just really fantastically funny, very amusing episode. Gave us a couple really memorable moments and memorable characters. Episode 8 was really, really captivating. 7 gave us some world building, and then, we talked about like the kind of things that held the show back enough. But I mean, I think I'm more intrigued to see what is going to happen with Shimada and Tatsumi in episode 9 than I am actually invested in what's going to happen with Nona and the Arbiters in the larger story of the show right now. But I'm like I don't know. I'm optimistic that based on its reputation, that the last piece of this is going to be going to be good and is going to have some stuff to say. So yeah, 3.5 stars.
There we go then. And much as I gripe and bitch, like I am in absolute agree with you that I do want it to end well, and it's still possible that it will. I mean, my complaints about episode 8, for example, could be completely undercut. Like, I will freely admit that they are fallible and based pretty much entirely on conjecture and speculation. So, we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping so. I don't want, like, the last Deshou the Third to end its final, pod episode with me just being here like this, like, well, it turned out to be a right load of shit, didn't it? Yay!
The H
I'm going. Yay! I'm going to drink some sort of carcinogenic liquid now. Anyway, never mind. Right. That brings us to the end of the podcast. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening, whether you're catching this live, if you're catching this as a patron, or if you're catching this as someone who listens to us on the free. Always appreciated wherever you may be coming from. If you've got the time, go follow us on Twitter at Warui Deshou. You can find me at Shadon1010, and also just give us a like, subscribe, follow, smash all those social media engagement buttons. Think of it as like whack-a-mole, just keep hitting them. Keep hitting until they're all down on our services like Apple Music, Spotify, etc., wherever you may find this podcast, and YouTube. Do it.
You can find me on Twitter at The Subtle Doctor, and like Shadon said, it's if you can't or just don't feel the need to financially support us through, well, the next couple weeks through Patreon, and then going on from there, Ko-fi. We'd appreciate any of those financial supports, but the great ways to support the show, if you don't want to do that, by subscribing and sharing and helping us defeat the mighty algorithm with your likes and your reviews, your 5 stars on Apple Music and such like. But yeah, no, for me, it's just at The Subtle Doctor on Twitter.
Awesome. Right. On that note, then, we'll leave you all there. Wherever you may be in the world, wherever you may be doing right now, take care, stay safe, look after yourself and your loved ones, your friends and family. And as we often say on this podcast, because it's been our motto ever since we stole it shamelessly from a show that we're both really fond of, embrace everyone to the ends of the universe. Good night.
Bring back the brothers.